Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Fundraising BIDness Talk. This is episode 34. My name is Patrick Cyber. I'm the owner and lead auctioneer for G Events LLC, based out of Beaverton, Oregon, and I am a professional benefit auctioneer. We gather each week, Wednesdays, for Fundraising BIDness Talk to discuss things that are happening in the benefit auction business, maybe occasionally the golf tournament business. But this week we're going to focus in on a topic that has been on the top of my mind for quite some time, and something that I, every now and then you get these revelations, right? And those aha moments, and you think to yourself, are you crazy, or is this a really, really good idea? And this one popped in my head about, close to about a year ago now. And it was something that made sense to me. But as I asked fellow benefit auctioneers, they didn't disagree, but they were confused, and it was such a difference from what we have traditionally thought of doing, that they were like, wow, that's an interesting concept, right? So I'm going to dive into it because we've got many months and several events that have actually tried it now. And I want to dive into it because it's something that I believe is here to stay. And I think as we move forward in this new environment of virtual and moving to hybrid, hopefully eventually, and when we do that, we're going to continue online bidding, right? And online bidding is a part of our landscape now, and I think our nonprofit partners and auctioneers need to embrace it in the fundraising industry. It was not extremely popular, although there are some that have been doing online bidding for many, many years. Our friends at Octria were started as an online bidding platform for the benefit business, but in many ways, as we were gathering, it was not something that we really, truly 100% embraced, and we've had to now. So as we get started, I want to remind folks, as you tune in, please feel free to type in a hello and tell us where you're tuning in from today in the comments or the chat section, depending on which platform you are on with us today. I always like to remind everybody we're using StreamYard, and StreamYard allows us to broadcast in multiple platforms simultaneously. So today we are in 6 different platforms live. We are going to both my Facebook personal and our G Events Facebook page. We're also broadcasting on LinkedIn on our profile page, my personal profile page. We're on YouTube at the G Events page. We're also on Twitter, coming through on Periscope, and that'll be changing here real soon, but that's happening. And we're also on Twitch for all my gamer friends out there, right? So I have zero gaming experience, but my youngest Sam, he thinks it's cool when I'm on Twitch. So there we are, right? I also want to remind you that as we get going along today, please, please, please feel free to, if you hear me say something, whether it's on topic or it's something you just have on your mind, question you have about the auction industry, especially the benefit auction industry, please feel free, type a question in the comment. I would love to say hello, love to answer your question right here on the show. So speaking of that first comment that came in, we appreciate hearing from our good friend Abra Ans down in Florida. Abra, welcome back. Great to see you. She's a StreamYard fan. You got to love that. In fact, hey, Abra, I've got my StreamYard mug right here. Yes, that's correct. I won the giveaway on Town Hall a few weeks ago, and with Gage and Dan, and they sent me a mug, and it's fantastic. I actually have a plush duck behind me too. So anyhow, thanks for tuning in, Abra. It's great to see everybody out there. John Flashner, thank you for tuning in, and Carla Sternberg, thank you. Carla is a good friend of ours from the Portland Rose Festival Foundation. Carla is an avid auction fan and a loyal, very loyal supporter of the Portland Rose Festival, and also been instrumental in all of the parades and the floats. And Carla is just a great person, so it's wonderful. Her and her husband Gary have been instrumental in the success of the Rose Festival for many, many years, and so it's great to see Carla joining us today. And John Flashner, all the way down in Florida. Flash and I go way, way back. Flash is a great gentleman, done an incredible amount of work for helping nonprofit organizations. I believe currently an executive director of an organization down in Florida. We worked together at the PGA Tour, and when he was at another organization prior to that. And so great to see John tuning in. So thanks, Flash. Good to hear from you. See you. So let's dive into this topic, and I want to set the groundwork here. I want to set the baseline to help understand why I am thinking the way I am. And I said many times, lots of things are different in our new environment as we moved away from gathering events and we moved into virtual and hybrid because of the pandemic. Lots of things are different, and one of the mistakes that I see a lot of organizations doing is trying to take the old gathering event and adopt it to, or edit it, adapt it to the newer environment in virtual. And I think that the reality is we have an opportunity to start over in many ways. And I've seen, I say frequently that folks have taken our Etch-a-Sketch that we used to do to design events, and they've shaken it up and down. And we know what happens to an Etch-a-Sketch when you do that. The screen goes blank, right? And we have a clear, clean canvas to start over with. And so when you do that, I think that's always great in event planning. People kind of get in a rut, and they plan an event for many, many years, and they do it very similar. They may modify the theme, they might modify the linen colors, they might change the auctioneer, try different entertainment or whatever, but they basically have a formula that they're operating in. And when we moved to virtual, a lot of folks tried to apply that formula to virtual, and I'm not so convinced that was really a good idea. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to focus in today on online bidding, because online bidding was not, although it existed, and in some organizations and some markets was embraced in the fundraising BIDness. In many cases, it was not. Many people felt like online bidding would distract the attendees. They thought that it would, everybody would be looking at their phones throughout the event instead of socializing with the other guest. They felt like they didn't want to give access to the auction to people who had not bought a ticket. There was all sorts of reasons, right? And that's old news. We whether they're right or wrong, it's irrelevant, okay? But it is what it is, right? And as we moved into this new environment, we had to adopt online bidding, and it became very crucial to our success. And one of the things that I looked at when I said that was, or when we started doing that, was how do we apply the methodology of the auction industry to online bidding? Because we were going to online bid for our silent auction packages, but we were also going to put it on our live packages to help get them started. At least that's been my philosophy since day one. Tony Wisely, thank you for tuning in, buddy. Great benefit auctioneer, Tony Wisely, down there in the Southeast, I believe Tennessee, if I'm correct. Tony, it's great to see you tuning in, pal. And refresh my memory, type in the comment where you're at down there, Tony. But Tony has a vast wealth of knowledge, and it's great to see Tony turning in to Fundraising BIDness Talk. So with that being said, let's talk about the difference between what we used to do and how we do it now. So in the past, we would have a silent auction at an event. And that silent auction usually lasted, 60 to 90 minutes. It was kind of our social hour. It was the first thing that people engaged in when they got to the event. They had never seen these items that were going to be available before they arrived that day. And they had 60 to 90 minutes to bid on a piece of paper. So they were going to bid on a piece of paper that had, let's say, anywhere from 10 to 20 lines. And if people were executing those correctly, what they would do is they would put the actual bid amounts, and people would write their bid number next to them, and you would keep bidding it up. Now, you only had the 60 to 90 minutes. You were competing with lines at the bar. You were competing with a social atmosphere. You might be competing with the different people that you hadn't seen in a long time. It might be crowded. A lot of things that happen in that environment, right? And then the other thing that happened in that environment was we closed them at a hard time. And for those auctioneers out there like Tony tuning in today, they know that in the auction industry, we like to keep taking bids until people are done bidding. And that would be a true auction. And the reality is that a silent auction is somewhat not really an auction. It is, you might call it a timed auction, but the reality is kind of like eBay. People, we always had those scuffles at the end where people would block or try to write their bid in at the last possible second. Okay. And that worked for many, many years. And there's nothing wrong with that format. It worked fine. Now, as we move into online bidding, got a whole different atmosphere, right? We're recommending to our clients that we're going to have the bidding window open for at least 7 days prior to the, let's call it a streaming event, or it's going to be open for 7 days of bidding. And that bidding window is open 24/7. So it's no longer, we don't have to fight to get to the bid sheet. We don't have to, make sure that we're standing in line and we get to for a drink and we forget to bid. None of that goes away. All that goes away because now we can bid 24/7, which is fantastic. And we also don't have any limit to how many bids we can take. We're not limited to the number of lines on that bid sheet, that paper bid sheet. We're comfortable. We're not crowded into an overstuffed room that maybe the AC doesn't work at, whatever it is, right? We all have those stories, those memories of those silent auctions we attended. And we also have the ability to set proxy bids, right? And for those who don't know, a proxy bid is the opportunity to bid above the required increment and allow the computer or the software to bid for you when you get outbid. So quick example, let's say there's an item that has a value of about $500, but the current bid is $50 and you would spend up to $400 on that item. But if you could get it for 60, that would be great, right? So with online bidding software using proxy bid, max bid, depending on the software and how they terminology they use, you would be able to put down 400 as your bid, but the computer would only show that someone had bid $60 on that to outjump that $50 bid. And then if somebody bid 70, it would take you to 80. And so it would automatically bid for you, right? So that's kind of cool because that wasn't available in our old paper sheet method either, right? We had a buy it now line in the bid sheet world. And that was really designed initially for people who were frustrated or didn't want to spend the time managing the bids on multiple sheets around the room and trying to, get to the different packages that they were interested in bidding in. So I want to thank Paula Armstrong. Hey, Paula, thanks for tuning in today. It's great to see you joining us here today, Paula. So now we had all these features, and one of the things that came up to my mind was you can see that those two environments are drastically different. And the thing came to me was where do we start the bidding and what increments do we use, right? Because in that old environment with those paper bid sheets in that crowded room was 60 to 90 minutes to bid. The standard recommendation from auctioneers and from organizations is you usually started between 35 and 40% of what they deem to be fair market value. So if an item had $100 value, you might have started the bidding at $30 or $40, and then you would have gone in 10% increments off that fair market value, so $10, and you would have run that up to about 135, 150%, depending on where you were. And if you got to that 150%, it was kind of a buy it now. In other words, what meant was the bidding automatically ended and you got that item, right? So that was the old methodology, and that's what we did with bid sheets. So as we moved to the online world, I had clients call me and saying, "Hey, what do you do? What do you do? Where do we set the bidding?" And I heard several auctioneers in group phone calls with other benefit auctioneers that we, hey, hello, Paula. I said hello, but she's chiming in with a little hello. It's great to see you, Paula. And we, I heard auctioneers saying, "Well, we better start it at 50." We probably started at 50% because they were concerned that, are people going to actually do this? How are they going to drive any traffic to these online bidding platforms? They're not having the gala in the ballroom, and will people attend online? And so they felt like, hey, we got to protect the nonprofit and we got to start at 50%. I was like, hang on a second. Hang on a second. And the revelation hit me. And this was the revelation, folks, is that on the other side of the auction industry, where we sell cars and personal items and antiques and collectibles and coins and cars and real estate and livestock, and we sell all these incredible things in the other sides of the auction industry. Well, that segment of the industry has been doing online bidding for 20, 25 years. And I would think, that's the way my mind works, I would think that we had it figured out by now. So I picked up the phone and I went to the Facebook group that we have for auctioneers. They're all members of the National Auctioneers Association and members of the Benefit Auction Specialist group that are people who focus primarily on benefit auctions. And I went to those groups and I started looking around and I started searching and I started asking, where do you start the bidding on an online auction? Not a benefit online auction, but just a standard online auction. If I'm selling an estate, if I am selling a piece of real estate, if I'm selling whatever I'm selling, online auctions, consignment events, whatever it is, where do you start the bidding? And I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked because I heard the same answer over and over and over again. And the answer was $1. And $1? You start the bidding at $1? And that's what I heard. And I learned from other auctioneers around the country who have made a lot of money and been very, very successful in running online auctions in those other segments of the industry. And they all said the same thing. We start at $1. Occasionally I heard $5. Occasionally I heard $10. But for the most part, it was $1. And then I learned in those auction software programs that I'll go back to that. But I asked them, why $1? And they say, Patrick, there's an old phrase in the auction business, and because I'm only about 10 years into this now, they said it's always been the same. It does not matter where you start the bidding, it's where you finish the bidding. Okay? And the goal is to start the bidding where you can get the most people engaged. Because as soon as someone bids, they have the pride of ownership and the fear of loss. And so why would you artificially set the bid high or at a percentage that you run off some of your bidders before you ever get started? Because the reality is, and we've seen it for years, I might start a package pretty low in a live auction just to get activity. And I know that if I start a package and that first opening bid feels like an incredible value, I'll get a lot of people raising their bid cards. And I know if I had started at 50% or I had started at a higher number, that many of those people would have never bid, right? And if they never bid, we didn't raise any money. Okay. So I said, where do you end up at? What kind of results do you get? And auctioneers will always tell you the same thing. Hey, the fair market value of something is what the closing price was, right? Because that's what people were willing to pay for it. And I said, okay, I can agree, disagree, because the one factor there is that I keep incorporating or keep in mind to bring me back to reality is what is the size of the audience, and is the audience a buyer? Are they folks that are in a position to buy what we're selling, right? And we can have a ton of people, that are at an auction, but if they're not in a position, if they don't have the resources or the passion to buy items, then it doesn't matter what we're selling, right? The key premise in all of this is you've got to have items that your audience wants to buy. But once we get them hooked, they will have pride of ownership and fear of loss, and they will continue to bid. And so I thought, wow, this makes a lot of sense to me, and this is so different than the philosophy that we used in the gathering event on these silent auctions. Wow, what an interesting concept, right? And we could do it because we had a week. We have a week to bid. We're not under the pressure of that. We've got to serve them dinner in a few minutes, right? Or we got to get everybody to the back end of the ballroom to sit down for dinner, or we've got a program and we want to show them a video. And all. We don't have any of those pressures. We have a week, and that week is valuable. Why? Because we can promote our auction. And I think in the past, we relied on, we might have promoted selling tickets to our event. But today, most of these events that are virtual or hybrid, we don't have a ticket sale, right? I think one of the greatest benefits of this virtual environment is its low or no barrier to entry. We don't need someone to buy a ticket, buy a new outfit, get their hair done, get an Uber to the venue, get a baby. We don't have any of those barriers, right? So we could take all that time, that energy that we focused on selling tickets, and let's use those resources to promote our actual auction. Okay. So I thought about it. I bounced it off a couple of my clients, and our good client down in Sherwood, Oregon, ironically, we have several down there, but one of them said, Patrick, we'll try that. And it was ridiculous. It was absolutely amazing. We ran promotions right from the get-go when we opened bidding, and we said, hey, today online bidding opened and everything started at $10, because that tends to be the number I used, right? We're in the fundraising business. So I said $10. And that's so shocking to what people were used to seeing, that the fact that there's an online auction fundraiser that every item started at $10, what do you think happened? Got a lot of traffic. And not only did we get a lot of traffic, but people had to register to bid. And we ended up registering 3 times. That's correct. 3 times, three times the number of bidders than we had had the previous year in a gathering environment. Well, you say, well, did they spend any money, Patrick? I'm going to get to that. But as a nonprofit, you are constantly trying to build your donor base. And what do you need to build your donor base? You need an email, right? You need a way to reach those people. So when we can get people engaged and get them over to our online auction, and we can get them to register to bid so they can bid $10 on that trip to Mexico, now we can reach out to them. And maybe they don't buy it, right? But the reality is that every bid raises money. And now we know how to reach that person. So maybe we don't sell them that trip to Mexico, or that weekend in the wine country, or that vacation home, or that Adirondack chair that the favored volunteer built. But next time we reach out to them to participate in our fun run, or we reach out to them to participate in our annual appeal, or we reach out to them with volunteer opportunities, whatever it is, right? All of a sudden, we have grown our donor base, right? So that's fantastic. That one group, the first group I did this with, 3 times the number of bidders than they had had in person at their last gathering event in 2019. Fabulous, phenomenal. And now the golden question that I think you're probably waiting for me to answer is, how did you do comparative to fair market value, right? Because a lot of times we gauge the success we gauged the success of a silent auction. We gauged it success based on the sales prices percentage to fair market value, right? So when the donor gave you that $500 item and said, hey, this is worth $500, and then you started the bidding, probably at $200 because it was at 40%, and you did 10% increments, da 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 da, and you statistics tell us, we're taught at our benefit auction specialist grade classes, that if a silent auction was an average silent auction in the fundraising auction business, that traditional old school silent auction, if it was an average one, that it probably achieved about 50% of fair market value. If it was a really good silent auction in that old format, they probably did close to 70%. Now, there's always going to be oddities, so I'm speaking in averages here, and I'm speaking, based on what the industry tells us, right? What did we find out? What did we find out with that first event down in Sherwood, Oregon? We got almost 100%. It was crazy. It was nuts. All of a sudden, we got ridiculous success. And so I started sharing the story, and I started saying, hey, here's what happens. We're going to grow donor base. We're going to get a better percentage of fair market value. Now, and we have the opportunity to promote our event better, right? So the other events that I've done this with, we've had similar experience. I would say we've probably done 10 to 15 events with this format, and it's been ridiculous. I have been overwhelmed with the success of it. Now, I want to give you some tips, right? Because I know there's more details here. We're not gonna go too long, but I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. People ask me all the time, what do you do about consignment packages, or what do you do about that orthodontist who provided you with a $5,000 gift card for orthodonture, right? Can you start that at $10, Patrick? And the answer is, well, you can if they'll let you, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going to get the real market value of that based on your audience. But a lot of folks are concerned with consignment. If we've got a package going to Mexico that, you're going to pay the consignor, let's say $1,000, $1,500 for, and you're hoping it's got a $5,000 value, which is great. But you don't want to start that out at $10 and somebody end up buying it for $900 and now the package costs you $100. I understand the concern, right? And the gambler in me, the auctioneer in me says, hey, if we build a good enough audience and we advertise enough within our community and get them to share it, I have zero concern that we're going to sell it under the consignment price. But I understand that. So you can, okay, it's okay. You can set your starting price on some items at whatever your cost is or your reserve is. That's fine. I would not apply a reserve element to those items. In other words, in the auction industry, an item, we talk about absolute auction and reserve auction. An absolute auction it is 100% absolutely going to sell for whatever price is the closing price, when the hammer falls on that last sold number, the winning bid price, that is what it's going to sell for. That's an absolute auction. There are also many auctions on the other side of the auction industry where they do auctions with reserve, where an item, the owner of the item says, hey, we've got to get $1,000 for this. Now, the auctioneer may start it out lower, maybe start the bidding at 500, whatever they're going to do. And if it doesn't reach that $1,000, then they don't sell it. Okay. I am not a fan of utilizing the reserve method in online charity auctions, right? I'm not a fan of it. I don't think the audience is educated enough to understand that. And I think you stand the chance of getting a donor that thinks they want an item, but it didn't meet the reserve and they don't get that item. I feel like that could be negatively reflected on the nonprofit, and so could make an upset donor. So my tendency is, if you have items that you feel like you need a reserve on, just set the starting price to that reserve. And if it sells, great. If it doesn't sell, then we didn't lose anything, especially in consignment. All the consignment companies pretty much all work the same way. If you don't sell the item, you don't pay for it. So start it at that price if that is what you need to do. Um, and if you don't have that, if you're a little risk averse, uh, or the confidence that I have in the auction method, then start it at, set your starting price to match what your cost is into that package. I see a person tuning in here. I've got to say hello, and that's Ted Ormisher. Ted, back in Colorado. Ted and I were in auction school at Worldwide College of Auctioneering several years back, and Ted is a dynamic, fun guy, and a great guy there in Colorado. Ted, I hope all is great with you. It was great to see you. Also, shout out to my good friend Tim Stewart and Jill Marie Wiles. Tim is one of my mentors in the business, and has been instrumental, him and Jill Marie, in my success. And it's I'm always enjoy when Tim tunes in, and there he is. Can't spell hello, but he's got good info. I love it. Thanks, Tim, for tuning in today. So anyhow, so that's my point with respect to, I want to start everything in the auction at $10, except things that we don't feel comfortable because we have a cost associated with it. There's a consignment item. Maybe it's I use the example of orthodonture just because I've seen that in my market, where somebody, traditionally, I'm not a fan of putting orthodonture in a live auction, but it could go on the online auction, and it's the same thing, is that you don't want to sell it, for way less. You might offend that donor, that orthodontist who gave you that package. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is, where do you set the bid increments, right? I was on a call earlier today with one of our clients, and she was giving me the suggested starting price and the suggested bid increment price, or bid increment levels, from one of the very, very popular benefit auction software programs out there. And I was pretty adamant that it didn't make any sense to me, right? The numbers were ridiculously large, and they were at a high percentage that I think it created a barrier to people starting bidding. And here's a question here. In fact, here's a good one from our good friend Marilyn Quent. What an honor. Marilyn is one of my favorite people in America. She's with the Portland Rose Festival Foundation, and been an inspiration to so many people there, and a great leader, really dynamic individual. Marilyn, it's great to have you tune in. And she says, is the value visible to the bidder? Absolutely. I would absolutely. In fact, in this case, I would definitely make the value visible, because it makes the difference between what the bid price and what the value is. That difference is appealing, right? I mean, we all think, hey, if I could buy a Mercedes for a, for a Chevrolet price, wouldn't I want to do that, right? So that's a great question, Marilyn. We could go into deeper whether the value needs to be visible to the bidder at all times, and there is some documentation, and there is a school of thought that says that the value of a package should always be visible to the bidders. And that's a side note. But with respect to this question, because I think you're thinking about, hey, when we start that bidding out really low, do you make sure that the value is visible? The answer to that question is absolutely. I think it's a motivator. I think when somebody sees that there's a $4,500 package to go to Mexico, to go to Hawaii, to go to Italy, wherever it may be, and the current bid is at $100, or $500, or it started at $10, there's an incredible urgency to bid on those items. And as soon as they bid, remember, pride of ownership, fear of loss, huge impact on what's going to happen there. Hey, I got another shout out to my good buddy Megan Kavanaugh, coming in all the way from Buffalo, New York today. Megan is with Girls on the Run back there in Buffalo. She's done a phenomenal job for many years running that organization. Megan and I used to work together when she was out here on the West Coast and produced events and all over the country. And she is a dynamic lady and wonderful person. So great. Thanks for tuning in today, Megan. It's great to see you on the show with us. So, but yeah, Marilyn, I would definitely keep the value of the item visible. I think it's a motivator. The other thing I'm going to tell you, and this is where I was headed with increments, right? Is if we start everything at $10 and we do have that, let's say it's a $2,000 valued item, maybe it's a weekend in Sun River in our market, or that vacation home type of deal. If I was calling bids in a live environment and my opening bid, let's say, was $100, I would probably go in $100 increments in a live auction with an audience in an in-person event. But when I got to a at $100, I'd probably go in $50 increments. I go 100 up, bid now 50 and 50, and 200 is now the bid 2.5, now 3. When I got to 1,000, I would kick it to 100. So now I'm at 1,000, and now 1,100, and 1,100 I'll bid now $1,200 to bid. I'm bid 1,100, now 1,200. And I'd go in $100 increments, and then at usually about 2,500, I'd kick it to 250s. Okay, and we'd go from 25 to 27.5. Now, why that is important is so many times in online bidding software for benefit auctions, not in the other side of the industry we've been referring to today, but in the fundraising auction software, they recommend 10% of the value. Okay, so that $2,000 package, they're going to probably tell you to start at 40% of that. So it's at $800, and then they're going to go in $200 increments. Okay, I think you lose bidders right from the get-go when you do that. So what I'm going to encourage you to do, you're going to start them at $10. I would say $10 increments. Okay, so because if you think you're bidding on something that's worth $2,000, and the difference between a $10 or a $20 bid and making it 30 or making it 40, it seems like nothing, right? But I'm going to encourage you to monitor those bids, and I'm going to encourage you to manually adjust the bid increments. Okay, and kind of the general rule of thumb to me is that if I from 0 to 100, I think $10 increments are appropriate. The only time I would go less than $10 increments is if the value is less than $100, or the value is less than maybe say $200. I might go in $5 increments. Really, on $100 or less, I would go $5 increments on the value of the item. But if the item's more than that, $10 opening bid, $10 increments. And then when it gets to 100, when the bidding gets to 100, then I'd go in and I'd manually adjust that to $25. Okay, so I when I get to that $100 bid, now I want it to go to 125 as the next bid, from 125 to 150, and I'd stay with those $25 increments until I got to 500, and then at 500 I'd kick it to $50 increments. At 1,000, I'd kick it to $100 increments, and that way those numbers are not. I think those percentages that are recommended by some of the software companies, I think they're unrealistic, because if it's a $200 jump increments on a $400 bid, to use my example, or $800 starting price and go in 200. Remember that if you bid the 800 on that package to start, somebody came in and bid the next level, that's 200, or that takes it to 1,000. Now your chance is to be at 1,200. Well, that's $400 more than you bid originally. It's 50% more than what you bid originally. And I believe bidders look at that and go, that's not good. That's not that I think I have to think about that a little bit more, right? So I like the increments that I shared with you, under 100, $10, up to 500, $25, up to when we get to 500, we kick them to 50s. At 1,000, we kick them to 100s. After 2,500, let's go in 250. When we get to 5,000, we can go in 500s, and at 10,000 we'll go in thousands, right? Depending on the type of event it is. So um, you're going to have to manually do that. Unfortunately, on the other side of the auction industry that we refer to, that I'm taking some of these best practices from, that's automated. And I have not seen a benefit auction platform yet that has that automation capability and automating the change of the bid increments. But it'll be coming. I think it will be coming, just because I think we're going to catch on here at some point that we need to start applying the best practices of the online auction industry to the online fundraising auction industry. So uh, that's where I would go with that. So I would be happy, as I always say, if there's any questions, please chime them in there, just like Marilyn did. I would love to answer any questions that you have. It's fantastic to see friends from all over the country tuning in and joining us for Fundraising BIDness Talk this week. It's great. I've got let's see, I got Buffalo, New York with Megan. I got Flash down in Florida. Got Tony down in Tennessee. Uh, Paula's in there. Yeah, we've Colorado. We've got Portland, Oregon with Marilyn and Carla and some others. It's great, and those are just the ones that I can see because they've tagged something. So anyhow, this is something that I feel pretty strongly about. I think that the proof's in the pudding. I mean, the 25 years of experience, why would we reinvent the wheel? Why wouldn't we? Uh, why wouldn't we take those best practices? Now, let's talk about, and this will be, we'll start wrapping it up here pretty soon, but one of the things that I stress is crucially important on this is the promotion. I've said that before. Take all the energy that you spend on chasing down, creating invites and trying to sell tickets and things like that. And let's focus on the promotion of your auction. Are you listening to me? The promotion of your auction, not the promotion of your event, but the promotion of your auction. Let's focus on the items that you have for sale. Remember in the past, let's go back for a second. Let's go back to that gathering environment. We had 200 people in the room, 300 people, 400, 500 people. Remember, they came as pairs, they were couples. So take that number and divide that by half, and that's how many pocketbooks you had in the room, right? And they were captured, they were in the room with you. Okay. Well, in our new online world, um, sky's the limit, right? How many people can we reach? Now, I don't want to give you false illusions of grandeur and think that, you can register thousands and thousands of bidders, but it is possible. But I think you can greatly grow the number that you had in that gathering environment because of the online environment, right? And I think one of the keys to do that is to promote the auction elements in the online bidding, and that this is a week long of fundraising, right? One of the premises that I've operated under for many years, doing what I've done now for, raising funds for nonprofits for 35 years, is that everybody wants to support charity until you tell them which one. And as soon as we tell them which charity we're supporting, we are going to lose a large group of those people, right? Because they have their own they have their own special causes and organizations that they're fond of, right? So when we tell them that, hey, we're raising money for, that segments our audience, okay? And I would present that the number of people that will support one nonprofit versus the number of people who could enjoy a week in Mexico are two different audiences. So I am going to encourage you to promote your items that are available. And I'm going to encourage you to promote that bidding started at $10 and see what kind of a result you get. Different than saying, hey, we're having a fundraiser and it's on Saturday night and you get to have a chicken dinner and be in a crowded ballroom and you have to spend 6 hours there. How many times have we told people we don't want them? They've given us all sorts, we've given them all sorts of opportunities to say no. I'm not available on Saturday. I don't have a suit. I don't want to get dressed up. I don't, whatever. I don't. But if I say, hey, are you interested in bidding $100 on a 7-night stay in Mexico and supporting XYZ? Because it could literally be any XYZ at that point, because what we captured was their energy and their desire to be in Mexico. As soon as they bid, they've got their toes in the sand. They can feel that warm sand on their toes. They can feel that margarita sweating in their hands and the umbrella drink, and they are hooked. Okay. And it doesn't matter where the money goes. And at the end of the day, we as nonprofits should not care, because we are trying to raise money in this very challenging environment, right? So I'm going to encourage you, promote your items, promote your auction, promote where the starting bids were. It's great if you can say all the bids, all the items start at $10. But if that'll get attention. You can even say most items will start at $10. The average person scans over it quickly. They'll still say, wow, starting bids at $10. I got to check out what that is. And as soon as they check it out, what do? Well, they register to bid because they see that package that is, worth $1,000, and the current bid's at 50, the current bid's at 100, the current bid's at 10, and they register to bid. And what happened? We just rang the bell on the donor base, because we grabbed one more person we can reach out to. And now we have an opportunity to share our mission and our message. And hopefully we can gather them as a supporter in some way, because they wanted to bid on that $1,000 package for $100, right? So get engaged with that. Social media is great. The other thing that, and we can do a whole segment on this, but we're doing it for, I would say, probably 80-90% of our clients now, is the kickoff preview. What I call it, I take a live stream and I produce it with one other person from the nonprofit. We do it on the day that bidding opens. Okay. And we have a couple of goals with it, but when we do it, we stream it to their Facebook account or other social media accounts that we can stream to, wherever their biggest audience is. And that's why we do it, is because that's where their audience is. And we kind of glamorously kick off fundraising week. And what we do there is we share with people what we're going to be supporting with the funds that they support the organization with what the funds that we generate from their buying of auction items and from donating and things of that nature. We don't have to go too deep into that. We really just want to say, hey, well, this is what we're going to use the money for this year. But then we educate them on how to participate. And what I mean by that is show them what website to go to, walk them through the homepage on your bidding site, explain to them why they have to register, explain to them why they have to give a credit card, explain to them what proxy bidding means, what bid extension means, all those elements, and really educate the viewer as to how they can support that organization, and highlight some packages, highlight a few packages that are in your auction, and get them excited about that. Show them how to share packages on their social media. Many of the platforms, when you go into an individual package, you'll see social media icons in the top half of that items page, and those social media accounts are quick links to post that item, not the auction, but that item on your social media account. So get that board of directors out there going through and sharing that Mexico, that Hawaii, that Italy, that vacation home package with their followers, and that will drive more traffic, right? And so it's fantastic. But start off with that kickoff preview show. Focus on some banter throughout the week, promoting individual items, right? If you keep running the ad that, hey, it's fundraising week, it's this event, 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 it gets old. People scan right over it. But if one day we show the vacation home in a beautiful resort area near your home that people can drive to, and then the next day we showcase a package to Italy, and the next day we showcase a package to Hawaii, people will watch. and people will follow, and they'll click, and they'll see where the bidding is, and they'll register to bid, and then they scan the other items in the package in the auction. It's a great opportunity, right? So with that all being said, I've gone longer than I normally like to, but you can tell I'm passionate about this, very, very passionate about this philosophy, and I think that it is really the way that we're headed in our business, and I think that software companies are going to catch up with us and make it easier for us to manage those bid increments, and we'll continue to get positive results, and we'll share those with you. I want to remind you, we do fundraising BIDness talk every week on Wednesday. And hey, thanks, Marilyn. I know we got an event with Marilyn and the Rose Festival Foundation here in a few weeks, and can't wait. I'm going to miss the committee meeting tomorrow because I'm producing a golf event, but tell everybody hello for me, Marilyn, and we're really, really looking forward to a great event for the Rose Festival Foundation. Going their second year of virtual, and will be, I guess, their fourth virtual event because they also do their honors lunch in the same way, and they've done a great job of what a wonderful civic celebration the Rose Festival is, and over 100 years of history in the Portland market with and throughout the state of Oregon, really, with the Festival Foundation. And they're doing great stuff. So keep up the great work, Marilyn, and happy to be on your team to make those things happen. So where I was headed, folks, every Wednesday, we're live right here on your favorite social media platform, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We are there for you. We're talking about exciting things that are happening in the fundraising business. And I want to remind you that you can always go to fundraisingbidnesstalk.com. You can see all the episodes. There's 34 of them after today, and it's going to be fantastic. I do want to give a shout out. Next week, we got a special guest joining us all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. Good friend of mine that I've met through the benefit auction industry, George Franco, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia's focuses on benefit auctions and real estate, similar to my good friend Tim Stewart. But George is a really fantastic individual. George and I met. He has a rich history. He was formerly a television news personality, has a great background in that, and moved into the auction business, the fundraising auction business, and it's been fantastic to hear from George. And I wanted him to join us, and here's why: because we're in Portland, Oregon, and we have our set of parameters, and we have things the way we do things, right? And George is in Atlanta, Georgia, and that probably doesn't surprise you, but they do things a little different in Atlanta than they do in Portland. Doesn't mean one's right or wrong. They're just different. Okay. And what I want to hear is, they're a little bit looser with maybe some of the restrictions than what we see here in the Portland market in the Pacific Northwest. I saw recently where George has done a couple of live events and virtual events, hybrid events. And I wanted him to bring some of that knowledge to us next week, because here in the Northwest, as we're moving into that environment, I think one of the real benefits we as benefit auctioneers can share with our nonprofit clients is experience of what is happening around the country, because we're all in different stages of this evolution back to whatever the new norm is, right? And let's learn from others. That's what this show's all about. That's why it's called Fundraising BIDness Talk. And yep, George chiming in. He must be watching, getting prepped up. Looking forward to having George on the air with us next week. So, folks, if there's ever anything that we can do for you, you can always reach out to us at geventsllc.com. In fact, I encourage you to take advantage. There's a Calendly component on there. You can actually schedule an opportunity to visit with me one-on-one. It doesn't matter where you're at in the country. You can see my calendar. Click on that, pick a time that works for you, and it will automatically send you a Zoom link. And let's catch up and hear about what's going on in your world and what's going on in your event. And if there's a way for us to help you from here, or chances are good we know a tremendous and a terrific benefit auctioneer in your market, we'd be happy to point you in the right direction. So geventsllc.com. As I leave you tonight, I want to remind you, it does not matter where you start the bidding. It's all about where you finish. Thanks for tuning in today, folks. And